Welcome to Build on Seeking Wisdom. This is Maggie in the flesh, this time actually on camera. We have a special episode today because we have these three all-stars in the room, all-stars of Drift. And what we're going to tackle today is how to actually work with engineers, a topic that as a PM I hear about constantly from other people in the product community. So before we get started, just introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Alexa. I'm a senior product manager here at Drift, and I've had the pleasure of working closely with Trevor and Pete.
I'm Trevor, aka T-Run, Director of Engineering here at Drift.
I'm Pete Carl II, some call me PK2. I'm the lead for product efficiency at Drift.
All right. So the question that I want to talk about is how I've heard so many times in basically every product event I've ever been to that the question of how does one work with engineers? And I feel like everyone always talks about it as if you're this weird species that we need to approach. So I don't actually believe that that's true.
No, we
what
seriously
are
a different species. Yeah. We're trained by the industry to think of ourselves as a different species, which is kind of funny.
And how does that show up in our work?
Well, no, at Drift we untrain that. Mm-hmm. We teach engineers, some of them, right, who are hardcore about this other species thing, how to be real human beings again. And I think we work because we don't differentiate. We're just hey adult person,
right,
do the thing, right?
So how do you guys, to new engineers that join the team, how do you describe the role of engineering here versus product?
Well, I think one of the things that we do a little bit different than some other companies is kind of the responsibilities that tech leads have versus product managers. So specifically, tech leads are the DRIs for the actual outcomes of the product at the end of the day. Be it the actual usage of the feature, the success of the feature, the reliability of the feature. I think in most companies it would probably be the product manager who's usually in charge of those metrics, but it kind of forces the tech lead specifically, but kind of everyone on the engineering side to have a lot more context about the products that we're building.
Yeah. I mean, what I love about that empowerment, though, is that it also comes with a lot of accountability, right? So if a customer comes to Maggie or Maggie's also a product manager, the tech lead is the first person we pull into the call, right? You guys, with the power comes all the responsibility of making sure the feature actually works, being on the front lines with the customers. We don't shield you guys from any of that, which I really like.
How do you balance that with actually having to produce features, right? Because that sounds really nice that the tech lead's responsible for all those different things, but at the end of the day, the tech lead is also a contributing member of a product team. So how do you do both those things at the same time?
I think there's there's two ways to look at that. One is you just be a good time manager. When you sit down, you do your work. Another way to look at it is Drift puts demands on people that they don't get in their other jobs. And I mean that in the best way possible. People maxed out at other jobs have a ton of free time because they just aren't challenged. Mm-hmm. And here, tech leads especially, it's no, it's you're expected to rise to the challenge. You got to do your job and synthesize results and make the product, drive the product forward and be an advocate for your tech people, for infrastructure, all this stuff at once. And I think we start to approach it at Drift. We push people and they respond really well.
I think it's also about creating the spaces where the team is doing more forward-thinking work. And so the way, at least on my team, we kind of think about the different work we do. We have the future planning and then the daily execution. And we have kind of created this space around the future planning that we call Storytime. And so it's a way of introducing our teams to new problems that we're looking to solve and introducing everyone on the team to that context. And so you put that on the calendar 2-3 days before. Everyone reads up on the context because the product manager posts the one-pager. And then you enter this space where everybody has room to brainstorm, really absorb those problems. And then when you're outside of that space, you're executing on coming up with a plan, doing the research, shipping the features that you story-timed last week, right? So being very deliberate about what phases you are in.
So the deal with Storytime is we kick off all of our kind of, I'm going to say major product features, but a major product feature for us is something on the scale of a week to a month, let's say. We keep things pretty incremental in that sense. So story time is an opportunity for everybody to get in the room at the kind of inception of that project and to ask a lot of questions. So we have one artifact coming out of Storytime, which is open questions. And every engineer is, every PM, every designer is expected to come out of that meeting with some open questions, which are the work items that they need to actually check off in order to know that they're able to actually like technically prove that this thing is possible, or whatever user research they need to do to verify that this is actually something that's like valuable, or the solution that we're thinking of is valuable. So there's a lot of, I think, like concrete action items coming out of that meeting, but it's very high level. It's very
Yeah.
Well, it's high level, but I think Storytime is just superb. Like, it's just it's a thing that we execute on very well compared to how other people get engineers involved in a process. Like,
I had a
go.
question from a friend who emailed me the other day, and she said, she emailed a group of PMs and she said, when is the right time to bring an engineer into a project? Because I don't want to bring them in too early, because they're going to go down rabbit holes and they're not going to see, they're going to lose the context, and they're trying to go too deep on technical solutions, and they're not going to be able to have that sort of higher level conversation. And so it sounds like this is how we've figured out how to solve that problem in some sense.
That's what I love about Storytime. And I'm going to gut check you a little bit, because at the beginning of it, you said we bring in like a feature that we're going to start working on. We don't start the Storytime with features, which but it was probably like a miscommunication.
He's a martyr.
We start Storytimes with a well-defined problem, right? And we bring the team around that problem, and we're like, given the landscape of learnings that we've made, the infrastructure we've built, like how might we go about solving this problem for our customers? And what I love about the goal of developing open questions is anytime you start to rabbit hole down we'd have to build it this way and connect it this way, you say, pause for 1 second. How can we develop this? What question could we write down on the board that would help us solve this later, so we can stay focused around like other potential ideas?
Well, we've got what I think the trigger for Storytime is this one pager that you mentioned, right? So this is our kind of product management document that states the job that we're trying to get the customer to do, right? Or trying to help them do. And I think that's actually the secret sauce in here. Like, we've got open questions, but independent of customer pain or a better version of the customer, you're just going to go down rabbit holes, right? This provides the kind of directionality we need to be at the product level and at the customer level, not at the the widget level.
Yeah, and that's what I love is we focus less on the solution, and we focus more on like, what does the customer want, right? A lot of it is what I think what it corrects a little bit is, instead of the product manager being responsible for coming up with with what they think might be the solution and introducing it to the team is the one gut checking, like, is this the right problem? Did we scope it down far enough? What else have we missed that we should be looking at?
Right. But it's not like you guys, when you started here or wherever, that you just walked into Storytime like knowing exactly how to do it.
Is that a leading question, Margaret?
No, because I know that in the past I've written specs at other companies where it was like, it was the problem we wanted to solve, but really it was like, this is what I want to be built.
The problem I want to solve is to build a reporting dashboard.
Exactly.
It's like, no.
Exactly. So how did you get to this point?
Just thinking back to like that first kind of story time that we did, and the thing that actually got us all on the same page is when we came up with that tagline. It was like,
develop open
greet your
questions.
Yeah, well, not develop open questions, but like the actual outcome that we were trying to solve for, which was like greet your prospects with a personalized message on your site.
This is a project that we worked on probably a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Oh, almost a year ago to this day.
Almost a year ago, yeah.
Wow. Growth last year.
And I think like once we had all had that same story in our mind of like, okay, does the problem that we're actually like putting forth, or the solution that we're putting forth, solve that problem? We immediately all like refocused on like a much narrower idea. And I think like that eliminated a lot of the conflict that we had early on, just trying to like butt heads and like push our own agenda forward where
it's
we really
like
needed to align.
Leadership principle, except using that same kind of like tagline approach within your product building.
Yeah, but it's like all good process is born out of necessity, right? So we like Pete said, we were arguing a ton about, oh, we need to go build this, we need this is an important problem to solve. And when
we both had the wherewithal to say that we need to get on the other. We need to get to the other. We're arguing to get to the other side of something. We just need to figure out what it is.
But what all of our spiraling arguments always ended on was, wait, what was the problem that we're trying to solve again? And so we realized we needed this like strong, simple tagline to latch onto, and we try and come out of every single story time with like some hashtag or some one-liner that is simple and repeatable and that everyone can grab onto when they're making decisions in their everyday job.
Yep, absolutely. And you carry that tagline all the way down the line.
Yeah.
I think there's another tagline that I really love.
It's in some of our press releases too, which is like awesome.
Oh, for sure. I just saw it like last week.
Yeah.
So it's being reused like even a year later, which is cool. There's another tagline that I really love that I think fits really nicely into that process, and I think I stole this from like an Envision blog post from last year, which is pencils, not pixels. So early on in the process, you really want to focus on kind of that pencils level, just sketching wireframing of an idea, rather than going straight for the like very specific technical or graphical design. It keeps everybody at that kind of high level where you're repeating the story back to each other and developing those open questions as opposed to going down the rabbit holes. If you as soon as you start like actually putting together like actual hard designs, things get like very over specified very quickly.
How do you, Pete, when you're bringing new engineers in, how do you communicate that? Because I think it's really simple to say pencils, not pixels, but
what the heck does it mean?
Yeah, even when you say that, it's like, well, I can use a pencil to draw a really specific design.
Yeah. I break it down in as simple terms as possible. And I basically say, like, your singular goal here, right, is to synthesize results. Not predict, not plan for, not create a roadmap for, right? Your job is to not try to predict what's going to happen, but to create what's essentially an experiment, right? Break your problem down so small that you can execute on it immediately, right? They plug right into that once they see, well, what about this? Or don't I have to be concerned about this like weird performance thing? And they start to wig out. And I'm just like, no, child. Like it's just about bucketing all of your thinking so that you can focus 100% on each task you're working on.
Yeah. I'll kind of bring back the question that you asked earlier, which was what is the role of conflict in this? Any new relationship requires conflict early and often, right? To build that trust, to understand how the other person thinks, how they work.
And I don't even think it's conflict. I think it's more like disagreement. In order to like ask a question, you have to be willing to kind of disagree with the status quo that's already out there.
Yes.
And
which can be hard for a new person.
Yes.
And making a space where everyone's comfortable to disagree enough to ask that question, I think has been something that your onboarding process has actually been very successful at.
Yeah. Yeah, now that you mention it, I actually do. One of the things that I repeat over and over and over again is not to mistake feedback for criticism. Like you're at Drift now. Like you are hereby being invested in by everyone around you. And so when people say, hey, consider this, hey, try this, etc., like I think we're putting a lot of, we model feedback and candor really well everywhere. And I think maybe some people are super compatible with responding to that very quickly.
But so to bring it back to Storytime, what's interesting about always having that tagline up front is the disagreement can always center around the outcome you're trying to drive the user towards, right? And so you're not disagreeing with somebody's opinion, you're disagreeing with whether or not what they're suggesting will actually create the progress that you're looking for.
Right, it's not happening to you, it's happening because of you. It's kind of one way to put it.
Right, but didn't you have a story time, Alexa? You had a story time where a couple of new engineers or people on your team didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think it's because they weren't comfortable, right? Like any new relationship requires that trust, and if you haven't practiced disagreeing before, I mean, Tiran and I are in a fight right now. You might not know it. We had a big argument this morning. He's looking at me.
We hugged it out.
We hugged it out.
They didn't hug it out. I'm just kidding.
Still going.
Well, so, I mean, the reason why I appreciate my relationship with Tiran so much is because we disagree constantly, but it is always on this foundation of respect and trust and knowing that the other person is trying to do what's best for our company and our customer, and it's not ever personal, right? But it took us a long time to get to the point where we are today, where we don't think it's personal, right?
So wait, are you saying that the only way to form a long-lasting relationship with an engineer is to just get in like frequent arguments with them, which somehow lead to like some resolution.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So,
Okay.
but let's talk about one-on-ones, because
Yeah.
I think those have
huge
such a
impact,
huge role
yeah.
in how you actually start this relationship. Because I think it's one thing to say, pencils not pixels, have conflict early and often, but how, right? Because a lot of people,
Yeah.
I mean, myself included, I'm an introvert. I don't want to have meetings. I don't
Yeah.
want to have intense personal conversations, but you have to. So one-on-ones, I feel like, is the structured way to do that. So like, how do
Yeah.
you is that what you use to do this?
Put yourself in the other person's shoes and figure out exactly what it is that is pressuring them to argue that position.
Yeah.
Is it some deep technical knowledge that they have? Did they talk to a customer? Are they trying to save a customer who's trying to churn? Are they
Do
trying
they
to
have
get a deal
a different
done?
understanding of one of those, like a different perspective on that
Yeah.
same fact that you think you both
Yeah,
share?
it's usually that you're missing some key points of their perspective.
Do you come from a long line of product managers that you have to now, like, you have to kind of live up to the family,
Definitely.
I mean, bosses putting pressure on you is
Yeah.
definitely a real thing. That is
Yeah.
that is a thing that often causes people to do things that are out of character for them. And the faster you're able to recognize that that's like the basis of their position right now, the faster you can actually come to some sort of agreement. It's like, okay, I see where you're coming from now. Let's like move past that and like figure out a solution to that together.
Okay, so obviously you guys have formed a really good relationship. I had that awesome interaction with Andrew the other day. I actually had Luke tell me the other day that he wanted to have more one-on-ones because he wanted to be like you guys, which was really adorable. Who is the best PM or engineer you've worked with? And, what of those behaviors have you sort of brought to this?
So the best PM I ever worked with, my first boss actually when I was in college still, and he later became my mentor, and he's still a very good friend of mine. But I joined this startup that at that point in time was only 3 people. And the cool thing about startups at that stage is you get exposed to a lot of different hats. And he brought me onto a lot of customer calls, and we did a lot of early whiteboarding sessions because we were really just figuring stuff out. And the thing that I think really took our relationship to the next level is at some point we actually just started on the weekends getting in front of a whiteboard together and kind of jamming on ideas that we thought were cool and kind of practicing that storytelling, like product or project breakdown process and the exercise of actually breaking those problems down and kind of going through the early stages of them was a really great way to kind of build up a relationship and understand what the context and experience that each of us was bringing to the table was.
It's like you practiced working together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I want to know how to do that at work, though, right? Like, that idea of practice at work is something I've been thinking about, and I think, PK, you were talking about that earlier today, like, bringing that same sense of repetition and reps and sets, but actually doing it without, because we still need to ship things.
I think actually, like, I draw some inspiration from The Score Takes Care of Itself, which is a super Bill Walsh book. You think about it, professional athletes are enormously good at introducing practice into their work. But in professional sports, you don't just give an athlete like $40 million and say, like, go win some championships, good luck, right? I feel like the idea of drills is something that is so important, and I think having all the PMs in a room and saying, look at that PM, do this, they're doing it right, they're doing it super well, right?
Like tape review almost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we do
almost.
try and visit each other's story times.
That's true,
and
Yeah, so those sorts of things I think are they seem like they're the key to getting this done.
Yeah.
I joined Drift at about 20-some people, and I had the pleasure of reporting directly to Elias Torres, our co-founder and CTO. So ET's been through this many, many times. I think he's got something like 20, he says 20 years of experience often. So he's like, I got 10 years on you. He really, really impressed me. In just a few short conversations, a few one-on-ones, he was able to like surgically and very like tactfully unlock some of that raw engineering like expertise, which was just kind of like laying around. He did it mostly by helping me understand how deliberately my actions should be when I'm working. Like, he was like, look at me. He's like, when I sit down, I have 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes in front of a computer. I have to ship something. I have to say, I need to get something up and out in 30 minutes. What's something I can break down that small, right? And that kind of discipline caused by the fact that, the whole company is riding on his shoulders, and DC's. was inspiring for me, and it gave me a model to work after, and it was just like, I don't know, it was crazy. From that day forward, I sat down. I said to myself, when I sit down, I'm going to sit down to ship. He knows how to get you like revved up around something. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, what'd you do? Okay, like Pete, you were like you're refactoring this thing. How long did you spend on that? You put some new buttons on the page. He's like, that took you 4 days. Why'd that take you 4 days? You know,
It's not
like 2
comfortable,
hours, right? You're
Yeah,
just
right.
like
It's
you
doesn't
are
sound fun.
100% on trial.
Yeah.
But you're not defending yourself. You're not really on trial. Like that's him investing in you and
Yeah.
shaping your
Yes.
perspective and just
How
being
did you
like,
figure
hey.
out that wasn't him, just sort of messing with you, right? Like, how did you know that he had your best interest at heart?
It was faith. I just had to take it
Yeah.
on faith. I was here to learn, right? I was here to be invested in, and I think I just had to remind myself of that. Not to say that there weren't moments where like my pride was, bruised is putting it lightly, but ultimately that was for my benefit. It was for Drift's benefit. It was for the team's benefit. It was for everyone that I worked on that. I'm gonna say fixed. It's still a work in progress for sure.
I want to hear one piece of advice that you would give to everyone listening. If you had to help them go back to their teams right now and start to build more productive and better relationships.
Fight more.
Okay.
Right to the point.
That's
Cue
it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Can we edit in part of the Mortal Kombat theme? Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
No, seriously. Don't be scared to disagree, and the more you do it, the more comfortable everyone around you is gonna be with disagreeing with you, and then you'll build better products together.
On top of that, I would encourage everyone to have a conversation with someone that has nothing to do with work, right? The two of you are going to work together in very close quarters, and you don't have time to experience months and months and months of working together to build up a rapport. And I think the best way to supercharge that is to just go out and have a conversation,
Yeah.
learn where each other came from, how you got into the business, like introduce a little vulnerability into it, and you will fast forward that rapport building. And that helps.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem.
fun.
This is super fun.
Yeah, thanks. Now we can go back to having constructive conflict with each other.
Ship it.
Ship it.